open, but under different restrictions now. Again, our outdoor recreation, they continue to, say that you can do that without camping. So for retail, I was mentioning the grocery stores, so they have to stay at 35% of their capacity, but they can remain open. Shopping centers, again, 20%, the same as the retail capacity. Hotels and lodging, we talked about that. Restaurants are supposed to be only takeout and delivery at this point. Offices, they can encourage you to continue to work remotely, but they're not ordered to be closed at this point overall. Place of worship again, and the entertainment industry as a carve out, and we don't have a lot of that here. Things that are supposed to be closed are hair salons, barbershops, personal care services, museums, movie theaters, and you can see the rest of the list here. So this page, I just want to point everybody to it, is a great place for any kind of, all information COVID-19. So any business that wants to find out specifics and stuff, they can get all the information is on this page. So.
Matt, can you go to the 12% ICU? Our Chief of Police, Tina Nieto, commented that our Bay Area region has hit that.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to get it to pop up. When I was on this page before, there it goes. So it's a little box that kept popping up. I don't know why it's so touchy right now. There it is. So we're currently at 12.9% ICU availability.
And that's as of 12/17 at 11:59 p.m. Wait, but we're not at 12/17 yet. Can you hover that again?
Yeah, I guess that's off.
Oh,
Let's see if I click on it. Yeah, same thing.
Almost as if they're projecting it to be effective tomorrow. All right.
Could be. So any questions on that so far?
Can we travel out of state? I missed it if you refer to that at the start.
So there's a travel advisory currently that says that, if you travel out of state for non-essential business, you should quarantine for 14 days when you return. That's just an advisory though. There's no law or any kind of rule in place that would force that on anybody.
Okay. So a question to our city manager, are we going to communicate that? This is the holidays coming up. People do move, travel. So are we going to recommend to employees that if they travel out of state, that they consider quarantining at home to protect coworkers as a precautionary move to try to limit or reduce the chance of employees getting each other sick after the holidays?
At this point, and we had an all-employee meeting this morning, we are strictly following the California Department of Public Health guidelines, our OSHA guidelines, and that is what we are recommending. The advisories and suggested things, we're not making those mandatory requirements at all. But what we are making mandatory is what the OSHA and the California Department of Health are recommending and requiring us to do.
Okay. Yeah, I think that we could do more to highlight those recommendations. I know we don't have to communicate them, but I don't see the harm in communicating the advisories as advisories.
But we do. We communicated the travel advisory to our employees.
Okay, so they're aware that it would be good if when they come back from out-of-state travel, if they consider quarantining before coming back to work?
That is correct, and they have a whole protocol on conditions of how you should quarantine, why you should quarantine, and so we went through in depth. There's a 15-page document that we've distributed to all our employees that really lays out what they need to do to be safe.
Okay, thank you, Lane. Thank you, Matt. Councilmember Berkeley?
Yeah, I thank you for this report, and unfortunately I have to leave this meeting. So I can follow up with our Mayor Pro Tem about the survey, and thank you, and see you in our next meeting.
Okay, happy holidays. If we don't see you, well, we might see you tomorrow.
There you go. See you later.
All right.
Bye.
can we do what Salvang did and ignore the state order and the county order and keep our businesses open? There are some residents asking about that, and I wanted to be clear on what that entails. So you might know Solvang did it.
There, I could just, Mr. Mayor, I could speak briefly to that if the city manager, lady, did you have anything?
No, I'm not really familiar with that.
There would be potential difficulties for the city if it were to ignore that. Two of which that come to mind, the governor has threatened to pull state funding from organizations or entities that do not follow the orders. And there is some authority under the government tort claims that the city could potentially lose its immunity in certain circumstances if it was not complying with state law.
What does that mean, especially during COVID times? What does that mean, lose our immunity as a city?
If there was an injury that was caused by, and it was alleged to have been caused because the city did not follow some provision of state law, that person could potentially bring an action against the city, and the city would not have any of its municipal immunities in that case.
So if I got sick or died and my family sued the city, we wouldn't be protected by Embasia, which is our normal insurance pool, potentially.
I'm not going to get, I'm not that familiar with the concept to be able to give you specifics, but there is a risk to the city's immunity by not following the state law.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions? Councilmember Biala.
Not a question. Shall I hold this until?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Unless we wanted to change the structure of how we do things. Okay. So is that the end of staff presentation?
That's all I had on the COVID topic. You wanted to talk about playgrounds as well? Is that right, Lane? Or?
Any other topic? And I think playgrounds is one of them.
And then under this topic, do we want to take up once again the discussion of the loan program, which were implemented in response to the COVID pandemic?
Yes, and before we start with Matt or the loan program, let's go to Councilmember Medina Dirksen.
Yes, do we know how many active cases, not recovered cases, there are in Marina?
I
We can
pull that
get
up.
that. Yeah.
Like
I'll
we
look it
had,
up. Lane.
I have it, Lane. Let me find it real quick.
I've got it right in front of me. So the rates right now.
Tina, you're a little bit muffled, but we can hear you, but it'd be better if it was clearer.
How's that? Is that better? I'll let somebody else who's better at talking then bring up their report. We all have it.
Okay, Terry, do you want to take a shot at it?
Yep, I'll get it. Hang on just a minute.
Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, because I did have comments but not questions, but I don't want to then go to the loan program and then what I want to say isn't relevant to the loan program, but it's related to COVID. So I just want to make sure that we're going to not jump to the loan program before we get to make comments about COVID.
Right, and I don't see a motion before that. So if the council doesn't object, why don't we allow the council to make comments or questions? If there's
I
no
have the
objection.
numbers when you're ready, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so comments are okay. Please proceed, Terry.
So currently, we've had in 93933, we've had 430 total since March. We have 252 recovered. We have 161 active, and we had 10 new today.
And we don't yet know how many people have died in Marina or any other zip code. Is that correct?
Correct.
May I ask, do we happen to know if any of those numbers reflect, I know that we're housing people in some of our hotels. Do you happen to know how many we are housing in our hotels and if those numbers, if we are, I just wonder because if we're housing people in those hotels, if that's the case, I am not clear if those cases are cases originated in Marina or if they're from somewhere else and that hence drives our numbers up.
This is Tina. Can you guys hear me now? I put my
Yes.
headphones on. So for the housing that's going on, the cases are counted for where they came from. We are just housing them.
Thank you, Tina.
You know how many we're housing? Just wondering.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but an entire motel or two.
So Tina, would you say between 15 to 40 if it's entire hotels?
Probably more than 40, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Kathy Biala, did you have comments?
Yes, I did. I want to try to set this all in perspective because I know that people are feeling very fatigued about all the ordinances and the continual restrictions. And believe me, I think every one of us feel this. And I do want to say that it's not just the usual mandates anymore. The issue is of course, as always, the transmission between people, and that of course then bumps up our fatalities, etc. But I think that the difference is right now is that we don't have any ICU beds. That is tremendous. That means that if you were not only for your own COVID, sickness, but that means if you have any other open heart surgeries or any trauma from car accidents, whatever, we don't have the ICU capacity. And so it's not just about protecting everyone in your family. It's also saying our health systems cannot endure anymore. And that's the crisis here. So please keep that always in mind. And I always think about our healthcare workers, our doctors, our nurses, and what they're going through, because we continually infusing more cases. And I think that we have gone through such a long period of time that we really forget, we get immune to how, I shouldn't use that word, we get inured to the deaths that are occurring. And, just to set this in perspective, World War II had 300,000 deaths, American GIs. In 6 years, we are now over that amount in our country in less than a year. That is tremendous. And I think that I remember when our county was 12 deaths, and I kept watching all the time, watching the fatalities, and we are today 167. I think we forget, and I think we're now all knowing somebody who contracted COVID. It used to be way out there, and I personally know several people. So I think it's becoming more personalized, but never forget, we are entering an unprecedented surge right now beyond anything that we've had. So, and I know that we've talked about the recovery rate. My oldest son is a physician in the Midwest. They are seeing not only the ICU beds filled there, but they are now seeing people who recovered from COVID, and they are coming back with scarring, permanent scarring of their lungs from COVID. It's called pulmonary fibrosis. It is not a usual virus that you totally recover from. So I just want our public to understand we need to endure this and for a little bit longer, but really understand the severity of what our country is going through and our region. So just want to say that. And I know the businesses are really hurting. We're trying to address that as well. But Dr. Moreno spoke last week and said, we know that our economy is on a downhill slide, and that people who running businesses are suffering. But he says the best way we can help everybody is simply to manage the transmission and wear our masks and social distancing. And as hard as that is, it's also a proven way that we can stop this. And so I just plead with everyone to please think, we will be opening up again. We will be allowing outdoor dining. Then we will be allowing indoor dining, but it counts on us. Every one of us has to stop this spread. We have the vaccine, but it's kind of like putting out a forest fire that keeps growing with one hose. We have to take our responsibility as a community. So I'm just saying this just to plead to everyone out there in Marina. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Kathy. Councilmember Medina Dirksen.
There was news today. Thank you. Thank you, Kathy, or Councilmember Biala, for your well-pointed comments. We're all struggling with this together. I just want to point out that the latest news out of Solvang was that they have rescinded that order and they've reversed their decision. And now they are complying with the health order. So they went rogue for a while and then they apparently had a new council come into play. So for as much as we want to find ways to try and help our business communities, I've been patronizing them myself and telling them about these meetings and what Chamber has planned. We've just have to be so diligent about this. So I just wanted to point out that Solvang reversed its order.
Thank you. I wanted to say it's very tough being mayor during these days. I get literally shamed on social media. I literally get screamed at by business owners for being a mayor who's not helping small businesses by not standing up to the state and the county and saying, basically, we're going to stay open no matter what you say, no matter what you order. And so I know that there is a conflict between business transactions, business income, and the health of people that are getting sick and dying, and trying to balance those two. And there are people that don't believe there are 300,000 COVID deaths. They believe there's as little as 11,000 because they believe that most of those COVID deaths are attributed to COVID mistakenly, and that really it's just pneumonia or the flu, but that the hospitals get more money if they say they're COVID. So there are people that don't believe there's a crisis, and therefore we should not shut down our economy the way it has been shut down. And therefore we as a city, me as a mayor, should be standing up and doing what's right. There are other people that believe that regionally, Monterey, Marina, we don't have a COVID problem per se. And that the county as a whole might, because we have agricultural sectors and other sectors that are driving most of our numbers. But that us in Marina, we could keep our businesses open because we're not contributing very much to the sicknesses and death enough to hurt our small businesses by ordering them to comply with the county and state. And so I just want you to know that this is a very tough time for all of us. And it's not easy to be watching the businesses hurting, but the fatigue factor that Kathy mentioned is real, and we need more now than ever to come together as a team throughout our community and to help our businesses stay open to the extent that we can. But criticizing us because we're not standing up like Solvang did for a few days. I understand from Christina Medina Dirksen that Solvang has now come back into the fold of shutting down according to their state and county order. So I'll leave it at that on a personal note to let everybody know that it's a very tough time for all of us. And we don't know what more we can do for businesses, but we're going to try and talk about that in a few minutes, hopefully, because there is some things that we can still do. Okay. Anything else that folks want to say? Let's go to Councilmember Burnett. I'm sorry, David, I didn't see that.
I just wanted to echo your sentiments, Mr. Mayor. But at the same time, the fears you expressed, they're not founded in science. They're not backed by any real facts. And hopefully we can continue to respond to those kinds of attacks with science and with known facts. I mean, the county puts out reams of data. We all have personal experiences with folks who have, direct contact with it. So I hope that the public at large continues to educate themselves and to take advantage of the resources that the county provides, that the city provides, in keeping us all safe. It's not that I want to stay, my personal freedom, but my personal freedom infringes on someone else's right to live, So we have to always keep that in mind, that what we're doing is based on our concern for our community, for our families. We're not, ignoring the financial reality, but, you know, what's the old story? You know, you can have gold or you can be alive. I don't think that's a choice that many people would hesitate with. So, thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay, council, if you don't object, how about we go to public comment on what we've talked about so far? Then we come back for the loans and we have public comment on the loans. Would that be okay? Thumbs up from David, Christina and Kathy. Thumbs up, Kathy, nodding yes. Okay, we just have one person so far to comment on COVID-related items. Paula Pillow, go ahead. And we'll get to the businesses and loan programs next.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yes, I
Yes.
think you can. Okay, so I did have a question about Matt's presentation. Considering that we're coming up to the holidays, I know you cited the information about out-of-state travel, but what about within the region, within the county, within the city travel? If you're traveling or going to a household that may be family members, but it's a household you've not interacted with during this shutdown or this period, is that prohibited as travel? In other words, somewhere within the city, somewhere within the county, somewhere within the region, is that prohibited if this is a household, even though it may be relatives, that is not a household that you've had interaction with? Is that prohibited under this order? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll get to the questions in just a bit. Let's go to Ed. Go ahead, Ed.
Unmute. I just was wondering, since I am an essential worker now, because I travel to Big Sur twice a week for delivering food to them, how does that work?
Thank you, Ed. I think we're going to tell you it's essential travel, but we'll answer all the questions in just a bit. Did you have anything else, Ed?
Yeah, the numbers for Marina for COVID, people that have passed away, is not accurate, because a lot of the doctors, and I know this for a fact, have been marking patients that have passed away from other things, not COVID. I've lost 4 friends that did not even have COVID, and they got marked as COVID.
Ed, did you have anything else today?
You guys didn't hear me?
Yeah, we did, but you have 3 minutes, 20 seconds left and you went silent. I just want to be sure.
Yeah, no, I only had the 2 things. The COVID numbers aren't correct, and the essential.
Okay. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. And we'll go to Brian McCarthy. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I want to talk a little bit about our committees, commissions, and boards. Again, at a previous meeting, we talked about many of those boards being inactive because of COVID. And the comment was made that, other cities are not holding those boards. I took a look around at some other cities and found that, in fact, many other cities are holding their boards and commissions. And so I'd like to have a little bit more of an honest conversation about why those are not running. I think, that there's a feeling among some that maybe we don't have qualified folks who want to participate, and that COVID has become a palatable excuse to shut down some of those boards, something many of us know was being discussed before COVID hit. Maybe Marina feels it's not necessary to have those boards. Maybe staff is too busy. And if that's the case, I'd really like to see the city kind of express the real reasons for not holding some of those boards. For example, maybe the recreation department, with all of Terry's outreach programs, just doesn't have the time to hold recreation meetings anymore. And that's acceptable, I think, but to kind of just blanket statement say that COVID, the governor has allowed us to shut down these boards and that's what we're going to do is really feels like a slippery slope to me. It feels like a case of, I guess, using something that it is an out for the city to shut down these boards when COVID isn't the real reason. So, you know, I miss the sense of Marina being a real participatory government when these commissions were open and operating. And I'd like to see them personally be brought back sooner rather than later. But again, if there's a reason they can't be, I hope the city can have that discussion and kind of express from their perspective the real reasons those boards aren't being brought back. Secondly, I want to talk about something loosely related, I guess. You know, yesterday's meeting, there was a racial slur that was made. And while there may be some First Amendment rights to say certain things in these meetings, I want to remind the city that these meetings are being televised on AMP, and the FCC could come down on AMP for broadcasting some of those things that are being said by both council members and the public. And so I'm hoping that the council can talk about what's acceptable to say at a city council meeting and what's not. I would hate for AMP to refuse to broadcast our meetings because of inappropriate language. And so I just wanted to bring that up. That might have been better suited for general public comment, but here I am. So thank you for allowing me to speak, Mayor.
Yeah, you snuck that one in under COVID. Okay, thank you, Brian. Anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Just raise your hand. Okay, I don't see anyone. That's for the general COVID comments. So we'll come back to council. I won't go through all the comments because of time, and we don't always do that. But if any council member wanted to comment on the public comments you've heard, the only questions I have were from Paula, talking about regional, city, and county travel, and asking if it's okay for people to go see their relatives and family, even if they're not in the same COVID bubble prior to the holiday travel. Matt or Tina or Lane?
Well, my interpretation of the order would say that you know, it's the first bullet point is you're not supposed to intermingle with other households. So that would say right there you shouldn't visit, you know, other people of other households. And as far as the travel, again, the order does allow you to go someplace and stay in a hotel with your household, but it says you shouldn't intermingle with other households. So,
yeah, Mr. Mayor, our interpretation from the police department and talking with the district attorney is.
Excuse me, Tina, it's very difficult to hear. You're muffled.
I don't know. I'm so muffled today. I'm going to have to scream in my mic. Can you hear me now?
Just barely. I think you can go ahead, but just know that it's not easy to understand you.
Okay. You can't, the interpretation from the DA is you can't mingle households. So you could not go stay at another household for the holidays. That would be violating the order.
And Tina, does that apply to going out of state as well?
That would apply to going out of state. You're not to mingle households.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then Ed asked if he can continue within compliance to bringing food to Big Sur people. And I assume that anything to do with food delivery is essential.
that would seem to me to fit the essential travel.
Okay,
or
Ed,
essential, infrastructure.
Okay. Ed, that's the best we can do, but if you wanted to contact the county, they would probably be the final say on that. That's all I had as far as, I guess Brian asked, well, I don't know that he asked a question. He had comments about commissions and other things. Did any other council member note any questions or staff note any questions that I didn't address just now?
No, Mr. Mayor, this is Tina. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, still in the muffled stage, but we can understand you, but just barely.
All right, that was it. I was just testing my mic.
It's funny because there was a point tonight where you were crystal clear. The last time you spoke, second to last time you spoke, you were crystal clear. Did you have a comment, Chief? Okay, let's go to Councilmember Burnett.
I don't want to put you in the spot of being the COVID police on free speech, but Mr. Mayor, when someone makes an obvious mischaracterization of our medical community and how statistics are being reported. I think you have an obligation to the community to cut them off, or to at least correct them, to say that may be your experience, but the generally accepted or the known fact is that COVID numbers are reported as accurately as they can possibly be. Thank you very much.
All right. And David, this is the comment stage for us. We have the ability to make comments. And so the comment about about the numbers of deaths, there are no numbers I'm aware of per zip code. There's only one number, and that is how many people in Monterey County have succumbed to COVID-19. But it's never been broken down to zip codes, like Marina's 93933. And then you made the point about COVID deaths not really being COVID deaths, and that the overwhelming body of science is telling us that those that are called COVID deaths are because of COVID, primarily COVID-related complications. So thank you for bringing that up. I'd like to ask the city manager to address the comments made by Brian McCarthy. If we have articulated clearly why our commissions are not operating and whether they can be activated, as Brian said, many other cities have activated their commissions.
Yeah, our goal is to get our city back to operating as normal as soon as possible, both opening city facilities. Some cities have some of the city hall open. I think most of the areas still don't. And our goal is to get all our commissions as soon as we have the staffing, the capability to do that, and we feel it's safe, then we'll do that.
Okay, so Lane, I think
that is our goal.
Okay, then is it accurate to say that we do believe we can have Zoom commission meetings that are COVID safe, but we don't yet have the bandwidth for staff to be prepping and leading them?
Correct. That definitely is part of it. We've been trying for 3 months to get the Cultural Services Commission meeting. I believe they have a meeting now, I believe January 13th.
Okay.
So we are trying.
Okay, so the questions are going to keep coming even as we make progress, such as if the Rec Commission can meet January 13th, why not? They're just asking for, I think, transparency. Why not the Public Works? Why not the Economic Commission?
So it's going to get back to bandwidth. We had a all night. We had a retreat on the 10th. We've had a council meeting Tuesday night. We've had a continued full night tonight. We're going to have another special meeting next week. We're having special meetings in January. We're having a special meeting on January 27th and 28th. We are meeting nonstop, and get capacity and capability.
Thank you, Lane. So that is the exact articulation that was being looked for. We are not having commission meetings because we don't yet have the bandwidth with our skeletal staff. And I think that, as he mentioned, he can understand that. He just wanted to hear it, spoken. As far as the racial slurs, Bob Raffy, are we at risk of being pulled off of AMP? I think the racial slur that I heard was somebody referring to themselves and what kind of harassment that they have endured. But as far as racial slurs and First Amendment, are we at risk of being pulled from AMP from what you've experienced in our city council meetings? You're muted, Bob.
Sorry. No, in my opinion, we're not.
And I guess before we were yanked, we would have heard from AMP. We would have some discussion from AMP. I would think they would express their concerns to let us know we were going down that path. Do you expect that would be true?
I would expect that to be true. And I mean, it is a democracy. There is the right of free speech, especially in this context.
Okay. All right.
Mr.
Thank you,
Mayor.
everyone, for your participation in COVID-19 related, generalities about health aspects. Now we're going to move to the kind of the business.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Kathy.
Mr. Mayor, may I address an issue?
Sure. I didn't see your hand, Kathy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's hard to see, I think. So first, I just want to say that in terms of travel restrictions, please everybody keep the understanding that the reason is because our ICU beds are full. And we just tend to see this as, gee, I can't see my loved ones. The reason why is we've gone through Thanksgiving where everybody felt so tired and began to commingle with family and extended family and did travel. We see the results of this. So this is not just because somebody decided somewhere that, hey, we better tighten up. No, this is based on what has occurred. So please keep that in mind. We are risking our healthcare system by doing this kind of extensive commingling. So I don't know whether this is the appropriate time for me to ask on the public service announcement that I wish to promote. Is this a good time before we? Okay, what I'm asking is that based on this huge surge now in COVID and our very, very tired public and outside people just not wanting to abide by the simplest thing that we can do, all of us, and that is to wear masks and keep social distancing. Many cities have done this, but I think Marina needs to have something that we have postered everywhere in our stores. We've done this with all kinds of other movements for like the water issues and stuff, but I think we need to have posters that call attention and remind us constantly. And I'd like to see 2 simple posters. I had a third, but since restaurants are now closed, it doesn't matter for right now. But I just simply want to have a very catchy poster that says, we wear masks to protect you. Please wear masks to protect us, courtesy of the City of Marina COVID-19 enforcement. Another one, save lives, wear masks, courtesy of the City of Marina COVID-19 enforcement, in such a way that we have this constant reminder in our community. And I think it also enforces the fact that Marina is so serious about this, we do have enforcement here. And I think this would take a very little amount of money. We just, produce 8.5 by 11 or a little larger pieces of paper. And I think the Chamber of Commerce volunteers would be happy to distribute these in storefronts all across Marina and just have them posted.
Okay, does staff want to comment on that suggestion?
If the council wants us to work with Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Biella and print something out, we certainly have the capability to do that. That's pretty easy on our end.
Well, good. I'm glad you said that because I thought it would be another example of asking staff to do more and set aside something else that they were planning on doing. But you're saying it's such a small time matter that it's doable.
It sounds like she pretty much has it.
I will take responsibility.
It's just a matter of put on the copy machine, make the copies and give it to her to distribute.
Great.
Christina Medina.
Christina Medina.
Yes, I also should make you aware that there is a campaign that will be starting from the county. The Community Foundation where I work has convened leaders and city leaders in ag industry and health professionals, and a campaign will be starting about masking up. So we will see something coming down the pipeline in more official capacities. And I'm sure when that happens, we could be part of whatever campaign and flyers and masks or whatever. The Arts Council also has masks available right now with really cool designs. So there's a campaign coming to just be aware that we're on it and our city's on it too. And I'm happy to help in any way with that too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Sorry, Christina and Kathy. Okay, so I think we're ready to segue into the business loan program. Do you think that's the correct time to do this, Lane?
Yes.
And then after that, we'll talk about grants. But let's go ahead and talk about the loans then.
So if Marisol is here, we've kind of covered a lot of this earlier. Marisol or Matt was just going to give a brief update of where we are. And I think we can just show that that one spreadsheet again. That,
Yeah, there might be some people that were not here a couple hours ago, so you could be quicker about it this time. But just to give a sense of the numbers of businesses that have gotten loans and how much money we have left.
Certainly.
A little repeat
One
here.
second here, I'll have it up. Marisol, would you like to talk about this sheet?
Just as stated earlier, just a little overview of the way this Excel file is looking like. The initial authorized funding is what was initially authorized. We do have that amended authorized funding column where we moved some money from residential loans to business loans, and then we also have that $2,000 donation added to the funding there. So received our applications for residential and business. Right now, 17 of each received applications. I don't have any current pending residential applications. And we can start with residential first. 12 out of the 17 were approved and accepted the funding. And so that leaves 5 that were not approved. I wanted to add to that 2 of those 5 were not City of Marina residents, and that disqualified them. So 3 out of the 5 were City of Marina residents, but they didn't qualify under the guidelines of the residential loan program. So the loan amount funded for the residential program was $20,100. And I realize under the repayment, 200 of that 900 should be under business. So that's my unfortunate a mistake there. $700 have been repaid for residential and 200 for business. So under the business portion, 17 applications have been received. One of those applications is not complete, and I show potential funding requests for $10,000 for that one incomplete application. Plus, we have I put another $10,000 in there for a potential funding request for a for a business who did outreach the other day that said they were going to fill out the application. So I put that in there just for purposes of estimating potential funding requests that I was aware of. 15 approved and accepted business loan applications. One of those, I believe, is, one of the businesses that we approved decided not to do the loan because they got greater funding from the SBA and went with that instead. The other one out of the 2 that didn't get approved and accepted, the other one is the one application that I have on hand that's not complete yet. Therefore, they haven't been approved and accepted. So that makes up the 2 so far. The loan amount funded for businesses is $127,300. As Councilmember Burnett stated earlier, not all businesses got the asked for the total $10,000 amount. They asked for different up to that amount. So that's why it's not an even amount of loan funded there. 10,000 each business. It was really staggered on what they asked for. And yes, as I mentioned earlier, repayment, there should be 200 in there for repayment towards a business loan.
Okay, Marisol, are you finished?
Yeah.
All right, that was great. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Point of clarification. Do we need to first consider the agenda item about the grant and put and have that off the table before we go into the loan?
This is a good question, Kathy. It's the next agenda item, but I think that we could perhaps combine them if our city attorney says it's okay. Bob, can you weigh in on that question?
You're muted, Bob, still.
The items are certainly related. I think that if the council adopted a motion to combine those items, it would be akin to reordering the agenda, and that could be done by unanimous vote of the council.
I motion that we combine items 11G and 11H.
I second.
Okay, let's go to the public. The motion is to combine the discussion about potential business grants with potential business loans. And that is the motion. So does anyone in the public wish to comment on whether to combine them or keep them separate? I don't see any hands going up yet on the public side. So I'll give you a few more seconds. Very quiet public tonight. Ed, go ahead, Ed.
I would combine them both and
Did
continue
you say
on.
you would or you would not, Ed?
I would. Yes, combine both of them and continue on.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment and come back to council. Any comments before we go to a vote, council members? Okay, then let's have a vote, please, Anita, if you're in the house.
Councilmember Burnett,
Yes.
Councilmember Medina Dirksen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fiala,
Yes.
Mayor Delgado.
Yes, thank you. That motion passes unanimously. So we can discuss both. Before we get into that discussion of loan, I want to ask a question of Marisol or Matt. We had some stellar results, Matt, presented to the council several weeks ago by you and Monica about the amount of effort that staff spent and the money spent for staff to help the businesses get the state loans and the federal loans, et cetera. Can you give any kind of an update tonight, Matt, in that regard?
I'm trying to think of that update that we gave. I think at this point we've lent almost, I guess, if the 2 loans go through that are out there, we'll be at about 170,000.
No, Matt, I'm sorry, Matt. I was talking about all the consulting that was done to help businesses acquire grants and loans from feds.
Yeah, Monica's done a tremendous amount. She's currently at 20 hours a week, and I know she's probably working more like 30 or so. But she's working a lot with businesses individually to help them to submit applications and find resources for help. So I couldn't quantify it off the top of my head. I know she probably would have that information or some numbers, but it's been 6 months now. So half of that full-time work would be 1,000 hours or so. So probably about 750 hours she spent.
All right. Well, I just wanted to give a shout out to you because I think more than the $200,000 that's come out of our general fund for direct assistance, I think was acquired through our help and assistance to the businesses in Marina. I really thought that was astounding how many businesses were connected or contacted and how many actually were assisted in getting something tangible to help them financially. Okay. Who would like to lead the loan discussion? Lane or Kathy or Matt?
Yeah, so I'll jump into it, and I'll kind of start with the grant discussion. As we initially looked into it, and grants aren't necessarily impossible, but we definitely have some legal hurdles and challenges to do with the grants, and so our suggestion is if we're looking something for more immediate to help with the businesses, that we transition from the grants and focus on the loans to the residents and the businesses.
So Lane, the grants would be so much more preferred. Can you give us a little bit of information about why they're potentially not legal as far as gift of public funds and what that means, gift of public funds, and how that's illegal. Why the feds in the states can gift public funds, but the cities cannot.
Yeah. So yeah, initially we've have talked, and when we even crafted the loan, we crafted it such that these revenues are for a public benefit and a public purpose of keeping businesses so they can produce sales tax revenue and keep the businesses thriving in our city, which was a justifiable public purpose. Giving grants without criteria is a little bit more complicated. We talked with some of our outside attorneys, and they said that that cities couldn't do a gift of public funds. Our city attorney was telling me, or sent me an email today, that possibly charter cities have a little bit more flexibility, maybe.
And we are a charter city, Lane, correct?
We are a charter city, but I'm not positive there. So Bob, do you have any more on that?
We are a charter city. We're not subject to the prohibition on gifts of public funds in the California Constitution. We are, however, subject to a similar prohibition in our own charter.
Oh.
Ah.
Well, so I guess that answers that question.
And it brings up other questions. All right. So Lane, you mentioned grants without criteria. Can we legally give grants with criteria?
Well, if our charter doesn't allow us to give grants.
No, the charter does not allow us to give a gift of public funds. That's what prohibited the charter.
Yeah, so earlier, Lane, you said outside legal told you that grants without criteria equals gift of public funds. And my question is, do grants with criteria equal gift of public funds?
I don't know.
And then let's assume, just so we can move on, that with criteria, we would be better standing than without criteria. What kind of criteria are we talking about?
Well, the easiest example I could give was the Marriott Spring Hill Suites Hotel. And so we put together an incentive package for that project. But to do that, we had the issue of we could not do a gift of public funds. And so we had to hire a financial consultant, Kaiser Marston. They did a financial analysis that showed that the TOT revenue generated by that hotel in 1 year alone would almost exceed the amount of the incentive. And so so that study documented that the public was getting far more tax dollars than what it was putting for the incentive for the hotel. State laws had changed so that when you do that, you have to do this complete study. And then as those monies are expended, I think every 5 years you have to update that study and verify it. And so that's an example of a gift of public funds, what the process was that we had to go through to be able to document. So the criteria were established in that Kaiser Marston report. This is what the hotel had to do. This is the financial benefit that it was providing back to the taxpayers. And then beyond that, we still have a process that we have to go and monitor that.
Okay. Since one of the worst things we could experience besides people getting hurt is empty storefronts, it's a very serious concern to can't hang on to our small businesses. And that's why I want to ask, theoretically, is it possible that we could do a call for applications for grants? And this is long-term, this might be several months. Do you want a grant of money? And those people who apply that say, yes, we want a grant of money, that we could pay a consultant to do a nexus financial study to estimate based on their history what they bring into city coffers annually and how much we can extend a grant to them as an incentive for them to stay in business, just like we did with the Marriott, just like we did with the theater. Although, of course, it would be prorated downward. We're not talking $1 million because they're not bringing in $750,000 a year, but Maybe we're talking $10,000 grant because they're going to bring in $30,000 a year for each of the next, 5 years. But theoretically, is it possible that we could embark on a multi-month process that we could pick up applications at the front end and do a nexus study in the midterm, and at the back end, at the end, we could grant them money based on a similar nexus study that we did with the theater and the hotel?
Mayor, I think we'd have to.
Apples and oranges there.
I couldn't hear either one of you. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Mayor, I think you're mixing apples and oranges there. Development incentives are a much different aspect than this type of grant program. I think with this type of a grant program, you would have to essentially establish firm criteria, which would be, I don't know, things that come to mind would be that they would have to maintain a certain number of employees, that the employee, at least some of the employees, would have to be below a certain income level. Of course, they would have to have a city business license. They would have to be in business in the city for a certain period of time.
Well, thank you, Rob. That's even easier.
Well,
I didn't understand.
It's not really easier in a sense of, in one sense that, as the city well knows, grants take a lot of time to monitor. The city would have to monitor compliance with all the recipients of these grants. So
Thank you, Bob. Let's go to David Burnett, Councilmember Burnett.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Lane. Thank you, Rob. Wow. I can feel the compassion that our mayor has for our small businesses, and I, with him, have the same feelings. But we have a responsibility to our city in terms of it being financially sound too. So without being a Scrooge, you have to really look at the criteria for a business. If there hadn't been a COVID, would this business would it have survived? We can't invest or loan money in an enterprise that has little to no expectation of surviving. There's a lot of criteria that needs to be developed. I know a lot of blood, sweat, and tears have gone into a business, and I would be the first to extend my sympathies. But at the same time, this is not an invitation to solicit businesses that don't have a viable option. I mean, if not for COVID, they would be functioning and thriving and producing revenue. I mean, and if they can't pass that test, I don't really see how we're helping them. I don't really see how we're helping the city by going down that road. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. So if we gave a grant to 20 businesses and half of them went out of business anyway, I don't think it would have been a waste of money, because if we can help 10 businesses stay alive, we get money from them. That's how all of our money comes from either businesses or residents in taxes. So the money that we play with, the money that we allocate, we got from them. And if they go away, it hurts us financially forever until their storefront is replaced by an equally producing business. And our quality of life is degraded because we have empty storefronts in our city. And so I think that financially and quality of life, we lose big if we have empty storefronts. We have unallocated, let me finish, please, Dave, I'm talking. We have unallocated funds. We have emergency reserve funds. We have about $15 million in reserves and unallocated surplus funds. Most of that money came from businesses and residents paying property, TOT, and sales tax. And now for us in an emergency pandemic to think about giving some of that back to them so they can continue to thrive as families and generating downtown business taxes to our general fund for our police, fire, and parks, et cetera. I think that this would be the time when we have an emergency reserve, pandemics, earthquakes, hurricanes. Those are the times when we consider spending our reserves. But we, fortunately, would not have to spend our reserves. We, fortunately, have about $13 million in unallocated monies, surplus funds that have not been projected to be needed for the pandemic's loss in our income needed to pay our services, police, fire, parks and rec, and et cetera. So I don't think I think it is financially sound to consider criteria with which we would have confidence to help businesses out, small businesses, with grants, if legally possible. And we'll go to Kathy Biala and then back to, and then to Christina Medina Dirksen, Councilmember Medina Dirksen, and then back to Councilmember Burnett. Go ahead, Councilmember Biala. You're muted, Kathy, I'm sorry.
It's how irritating. So everything you've articulated is the reason why I asked to have this on the agenda. And I was sorry to hear that there might be some complications to the grant issue. So if that is the case, I have no problems converting it to loans that have a far greater accessibility and less criteria than our current one has, because our current one has things like, for example, that they have to be an X percentage over the Monterey County median household income. To my knowledge, all of the loans that have come from the feds, the state, and the local do not require you to have to go through that step of confirming your household income. That is a risk you take with your business. That is all that they're concerned. But we have built in so many criteria. So we have 15 people who applied for this, or 17. This process has been so restrictive that it has not produce the kind of assistance that I think our people are craving and asking for. So I would hope that without the grant issue, that we convert to simplifying and readily making our loan programs accessible. And I think that people have been surviving for this past year. The businesses have been learning how to deal with and just barely surviving. Now with this new stay-at-home order, I am sure that again, their business is going to be taking a dip. And we have an economic situation here that is not going to go away for the next year. In fact, they're still going to be operating at probably 30% of what they did before. I mean, we know that. And to answer Councilmember Burnett's question about new businesses, our old loan program specified that they had to be in business with a business license for, I think it was at least a year and a half. So that kind of is saying that we are granting assistance to businesses that have been proven revenue generating, tax generating income for the city. And so I think that if we hear from the public also about the needs of our business, I don't want to see not only after a year, but it takes another year for them to even break even, probably to get to even where their substance break even point, and then a year to even start making some profits again. I think that, we have to understand the tremendous drain that this pandemic has created for our economic engine, and they are our economic engine. So I'm hoping that we can, maybe if we have to move away from the grants because of the complexities, that we go to making our loans much more accessible. And this is an emergency. This is not like hanging on to our money because, it's discretionary. This is an emergency situation. Nobody has ever experienced this kind of thing before in our country and probably in the world. So this I think qualifies for emergency assistance to our businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. Let's go to Councilmember Medina Dirksen.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Mayor, and everyone. Today, I went to Marina Tires and bought 2 new tires and talked to Jordan there. And the wince of, I don't know how we're going to hang on, was evident. Then I went to Daddy's and bought breakfast because while I could cook breakfast for my children, I really wanted to support that business. And come to find out, like many other businesses, they're not paying themselves. Yesterday, I went to Cafe Mia, and the look on Horace's face, I just opened my wallet and just said, here, take it all. I'm not saying that because of me. I'm saying that because I desperately want to save our businesses. The upping of rents is troubling me, and they're barely surviving, and they're looking to us for some leadership. I want to ask the question of who's doing this and how are they doing it correctly? I know the city of Monterey has had a program partnered with the chambers. Are there some partners that we can partner up with? Can we model a program like theirs? Is there a philanthropic effort that can be mounted? Earlier today, Miss Marisol shared with us that there was $2,000 donated to this. I work in a grant field, and I know that there is money out there. In fact, there's efforts being directed in other communities. We are hurting. I think we need to be as creative as possible. I know the power of the grant. And if we're going to say, oh, business, we can't trust you. Daddy's Diner has been here for as long as I can, 7, 8 years. These are trusted partners in our community. And the last thing that I would think that they would want to do is soil their reputation by defaulting on any kind of help from the city. I think it's our duty. It's a rainy day right now, and as the mayor pointed out, we have $13 million in unallocated fund. Yes, there is something called fiscal responsibility, and we must be accountable to everyone. But at the same vein, we have to remember what happened with when Fort Ord pulled out and the devastation that happened in the open storefronts. We have an opportunity. I think we have a duty to see what we can do with grants. It's not reinventing the wheel. There are organizations that do this. There are other cities that do this. There are partnerships. So if I can lend any support, connecting anybody with anybody, we've got to do this for our businesses. This is something I feel very, very passionate about. So I hope grants work, and I'm willing to help launch a philanthropic effort if that's what it takes. We got a sculpture. Within 24 hours, we had $10,000 at our feet. But I think our city has the opportunity and responsibility to really pony up and help our business community. We are asking them to shut down, which is very hard to do. And they struggle as it is. They don't have big profit margins. So I'm just advocating to please think creatively. And I'm all for a loan if it could be modeled on something that's working. Let's look to other cities. Let's look to Monterey and see what they've done. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Let's go to Councilmember Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, council members, for your passionate discussion. So thinking about grants for a second. So if we establish adequate criteria for a grant, can a business that previously obtained a loan qualify for a grant? Okay, so that's one question. Should the recipient of a grant be required to stay open, that is, generating city revenues, add jobs for a minimum period of time before the money is treated as a grant? That's another way we could look at this. Consider the federal payroll protection loans, the PPP, right? These criteria and how these are used could be a model for all of us on how to move something like this forward. If they use the money to pay their employees, to pay their rent, and they do it for a certain amount of time, could it then be converted into a grant? But to just have a okay, come and get the money and pay us back whenever, I can't see where that makes physical sense. We don't have surplus funds. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. We have money that has been collected from our tax base. You know, they didn't volunteer this money. We told them, pay these taxes. So we have a fiscal responsibility to act with their funds in a way that is compassionate, that is caring, but also respects the hard-earned dollars that have been granted to us. That's all I had.
Thank you, David. And I agree with you 100% with everything you said. And I think you've come up with an idea that I wasn't even coming close to thinking of. A loan conversion to grant program based on longevity. So the way that it might work is that they might not have to pay back their loan for 2 or 3 years. And if in those 2 or 3 years they meet a criterion that they stay in business and they stay productive, then there's probably some kind of a process that we can agree on at front that that loan would turn into a grant. And so we wouldn't have a run on the bank because it would still be a loan, but there would be the potential if they stayed in business to become a grant. I really like that perspective, and it's not something we can do tonight. I think that tonight we probably need to focus on little tweaks to our loan structure so the loans can start getting out. But we should, as soon as possible, start to consider ideas like we've heard tonight from Councilmember Burnett and others to give grants, loan to grant conversions or strictly grants. I want to make sure that I don't misspeak because I think I misspoke earlier if I said 13 million. What we have is 3 million now that's not allocated. I call that surplus funds. We don't know how we're going to spend it. It's addition to everything we need that we've identified, 3 million. We also have 6.75 million that we recently acquired from land sale revenues. We also have $5 million approximately sitting in reserves. If you total those three, it's 14.75 million. This is a crisis emergency we're under. This is the time we would look to see how to spend our money. So 14.75 million, and many of those millions we have had in the bank since 2008, 2010. So it should not be the business of the city to hold on to millions of dollars and not spend them. When we have a national, international city emergency, we need to be creative in judiciously spending our money, remaining fiscally responsible, but recognizing the emergency we're in the midst of and protecting our businesses and residents in a way that is possible. And I didn't hear Councilmember Burnett say anything that wouldn't do that when you were talking about the criteria that we could use to give grants. That's all I'm asking for, is to consider criteria that we could use to give grants, rather than saying tonight, no grants, nobody, never, not possible. I heard some possibilities tonight that will take some time to flesh out. And I hope that we do that in the new year. But for tonight, I hope that we continue this discussion before we go home and we come up with a loan program with augmented funds conceptually, that we can have a special meeting already scheduled for tomorrow night to consummate the allocation of new funding. But tonight would just be direction on how to tweak the loan program so it's easier, fairer, and has more money attached to it conceptually that can become tangible tomorrow night in the special meeting. And I'd like to invite either Lane or Kathy to talk about the tweaks that you may have considered, or Matt, to make the loan program simpler and easier and more fair.
How about I put up the existing sheet so you can see what we have today, and you can kind of look at it and decide what you like and don't like. To go back though to Eric's not here, but Eric kind of worked on this in the first place. The reason the council came up with this program was because you were trying to fit it. Okay, you were trying to kind of fit a gap between SBA loans and the PPP program and things like that. So you're trying to hit kind of a lower amount that not everybody could get to. And that's why it had the income kind of qualifications and different things like that. So that was
Still hard to read, Matt. Sorry to bug you.
I can get it bigger, but then you don't see much of it at the same time, but that's fine. We can scroll.
That's good. That's good.
So that was I guess the genesis of this program. That was what you're trying to fit. And today's different, so you might want to look at this and do some different things with it. But
Matt, can you look at the interest rate? You have it up there, 3% from loans funding date to be repaid by December 31st, 2022. Can you and others speak to that? Is that something that we want to keep or change?
Well, I think this went back to somewhat of that gift of public funds type idea. If there's an interest charge on it over time, they're paying for the money that they're borrowing on. So that
And I
was kind of
agree.
the reason for it being there. Whether that's too much, if that's your question, I mean, you're looking at basically if you paid it back within the first year, there was no interest. And I think so actually we extended that out to December 31st of 2021, and then it's 3% after that. So
And so it's only $300 on a $10,000 loan at 3%, which is not a lot, but it might keep some people from borrowing. And I think Kathy Biala has something to say. I've talked to her about the date, December 31st, 2022. Kathy, can you explain your perspective on that date?
So as I said before, this coming year, 2021 is a wash. I mean, they're going to continue to go down in revenues, period, I'm sure. And so then it'll take a whole nother year just to get encroaching up to, break even. And then maybe by the third year of an economic turnaround, they might start making some profit. So I would say that we have 0% in repaid by December 31st, 2023, and that 3% from the loan's funding date to be repaid by December 31st, 2024. And so again, we're stretching these things out, so it's going to be much more less cumbersome and less scary for people applying. I think that we keep it to $10,000 per business. That the basis for the loan is that they're city storefronts. So they're businesses that have storefronts in Marina, and we maybe have set some kind of criteria for the annual revenues, whether it's net revenue of, I just threw this number out, 100,000 or less. So we're not in danger of financing people that have better income levels, and take out all this stuff about the qualifications for household income. These kind of things are very difficult. As Marisol said, some of these things are the ones where it became a research project to try and figure out if they met all of these criteria, and that we make the applications simple. If we want people to access this, and that means that we think that they're legitimate, that we're not trying to think that these businesses who have been in operation in Marina for sometimes decades, that somehow they're asking for this money and they're well-to-do. No business is well-to-do. I think we can make that assumption without having to have them prove it to us. Every business is operating at far less probably than 50%. So I think that we make it simple, and this is just on the business side, but I think that we need to also think about individuals as well. But that's my comments on the business side.
Okay, we have several other pieces to look at, and we will do that before we go home tonight, such as the number of employees and that kind of a thing. But let's go to Councilmember Burnett right now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, fellow council persons. So income verification is bedrock to loan services. If you take away income verification, it's very easy for someone who's doing very well to slip in. So it's not a matter of saying, we don't trust you, so we want you to verify your income. It's to protect those who are truly in need. It should be fairly simple to demonstrate we are in need of this money. It's far less easier for someone to hide income, right, I would think.
Right.
So let me just say one more thing. Land sale revenues are irreplaceable, okay, and should be used for investments in city assets, city hall, swimming pool, other infrastructure that benefits the Marina residents for decades. So, we have to be conscious that, again, it's not surplus, it's not extra, it's reserves. I mean, if we had an earthquake tomorrow, you know, that money would be sorely needed by all the residents. You know, prior councils in early part of this century spent land sale revenues on overhead, and the city went through money that was, you know, resulted in drastic budget cuts. Okay, I know you're not recommending that. I'm not suggesting that you're acting irresponsibly, but I'm just cautioning. I'm just cautioning. We understand there is an emergency. I feel that there is an emergency. But at the same time, we have a responsibility to look at how this money is being used. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I just make one clarification? Councilmember Burnett, I was not saying to get rid of the business revenue evidence. I'm saying to now, in our current loans, they also have the applicant reveal all the details of their household income. That usually is not part of these COVID loan programs. It just isn't. They aren't built like this, but ours now has this huge hoop for our applicants to jump through. So that's what I'm referring to.
I'm suggesting that we put a big X across all of that Monterey County median income, household income. I don't want my son who's earning money as an engineer to prevent me from keeping my donut business open, as if my son's income is supposed to be used to keep my donut business open before the city gives me money for my donuts. My son or my daughter or my uncle or my other household members, good for them if they have an income. That should not and is not usually intermingled with business income. It's household income for their life. It's not for my business. So if they have well, enough said. We have a lot of businesses that have family that live at home. That doesn't mean that their family gives their income to the business. And that is why most loan programs don't sequester all of your relatives' money just because they live in your household. So I think we should put, before we go home tonight, a big X across household income to make it much more simpler. That is the single thing we can do to make it simpler and fairer. And so I hope that we do that. Christina Medina Dirksen, did you have some input?
I like where the conversation's going. I appreciate Council Members Burnett's hybrid concept. And I definitely agree with what you just said about holding another spouse or household member's income against the applicant. I've heard that multiple times. So when I think whether we have an earthquake tomorrow, we're in an economic earthquake. And I definitely think we should look at partnerships, whether it's with our chamber or whether some other philanthropic arm, to see what we can do. We have a responsibility to our community. We're telling them to shut down, and our businesses are hurting. So do what you can to support our businesses, please.
Okay. Councilmember Medina Dirksen, I think we need to finish the nuts and bolts before we go home tonight. So we have a new loan program at the end of tonight that's easier and simpler and fairer. I think you just brought something else up. In the past, the city had a financial relationship with the Marina Chamber of Commerce, whereby we either gave them some funds or some rent reduction on an office building. I can't remember all of the financial relationships, but I would love us to do a scope of work contract with the Chamber of Commerce so that they can do the kinds of things they normally want to do for their members. But with our funding a contract for them, they can do the kinds of things they want to do for all the businesses in Marina. So they don't have to focus on their members' dues, fees. Normally they get fees from a member and they try to turn that into a benefit for the member. So if we give them financial assets, as we would a local contractor, they can do the things that they would like to do because they have funding to do it. So it would tie the city in with the philanthropic organizations, but with financial legal compliance. So we're not giving a gift of public funds. And I don't know how to explore that, but I know we've done it in the past. I don't recall the details. And in the new year, I would like us to work closely with the chamber because we do need to be creative and do everything possible to protect and maintain our downtown and small businesses. I'm not talking about Burger King and REI. We want them to stay as well. But I think they're going to be above the kind of threshold that Kathy Biala mentioned, that there's a net income threshold. And we'll talk about that before we go home tonight. But I hope that we consider what we can do with the chamber help on a paid basis through a contract if it's legal. And we'll go to David Burnett and then we'll ask staff to weigh in on the legality potentials of that idea.
Okay, well, how about this? What if we require not household income, but for those on the same tax return? I mean, gee whiz, okay? You file separate taxes, okay. But if you're on my tax return, your income is included in this loan verification.
I might add that if my kids work at Starbucks and I still claim them, that's not, I don't think that's feasible.
And
You're
also,
not talking about a large salary. I mean, they're living at home. You're claiming them as a dependent on your tax return, right?
You're getting a tax benefit for having a dependent, but that's to pay, food and rent and school needs. Your business is to stay alive.
yes, and to reap some
So you
benefits.
have other members of the household who are not on that return that you're excluding, right? So, I mean, it just seems to me that is a concession that should be considered.
Thank you, David. Councilmember Biala?
I was just going to comment and say that other COVID loans do not try to evaluate whether you are deserving of this on a business level because of who is at home or what other income you have. If a person who strives and works so hard to maintain a business, I don't think that and I think that business should legitimately be producing some value to their family so they can send their kids to college or whatever. It's not up to us to say now, let's look at your home income because we're going to make a decision that you can only be at this particular level. And so that's why I think that, the concept has not been part of other COVID loans. I was going to say something else, but I've forgotten now what it was.
Okay, let me jump in here and then we'll go to David Burnett and then possibly back to Kathy Biala if she has something more. Matt, can you read number 3 as an example for me of how complicated we made this and something else that I think should have an X through it? But can you please read number 3?
Sure. For businesses that were closed for at least 45 days from March 1st, which was the first, they were trying to hit the first window here of the shutdown, to May 31st, 2020, and for household incomes no more than 3 times the Monterey County median income, but more than otherwise allowed income. Loans up to $5,000 may be made. This is for people who did not meet the income qualifications above. This provided them the ability to get a $5,000 loan versus the $10,000 loan. That's what the council was trying to target that time.
Right. And that's a pretty complicated stipulation, although it is a second bite at the apple, but it wouldn't be needed if we removed the household income requirement. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was the limiting factor, was the household income.
Okay. And can you read number 4, just in case people can't see the font?
Must have had applied for SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan or Payroll Protection Program loan due to the COVID-19 event, or explain why we're unable to apply.
Did you find in your experience, Matt, that was a problematic or not problematic for applicants?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it might have been another step that people did, but the whole idea was just to attempt to apply, because that was free money that was sitting out there. That was $10,000, like you were talking about, before, a forgivable loan. So we just wanted people to make the effort, before they just said, oh, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, go to the states and the feds before you come to the city was kind of our thinking, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so is that even applicable anymore? Or would you recommend that we keep it?
Well, they do have economic injury disaster loans still, as far as I know, there's money there. The payroll protection program had dried up, and I guess they're trying to do another deal. It might make sense now to expand it to California, because California, I just got an email about 2:00 today that, they're saying, oh, hold your horses, we're working as fast as we can, but that $25,000 grant program is going to launch any day. And they've also got, other programs deferring taxes, your sales tax and things like that. You have to send to them. And there's also a loan program through them that's forgivable as well. So.
Okay. Let's go to David Burnett, and then we'll do some more looking at this application. Go ahead, David.
Okay, so I'll take one more pass at this. Okay, we'll exclude the children, but definitely the spouse. Okay, so if the two of you are on the same tax return, both incomes should be part of the qualification. I can't see you objecting to that.
Now, David and staff, do you think that was scary and went away? And if so, maybe that's okay. If they have something to hide that we can't trust to give them our money.
It's not a matter of trust or one thing that we also we have a credit rating. The city has a credit rating. If we start distributing funds, even in an emergency, the rating agencies look at these things, and it could damage our credit rating.
Okay. Do you think, Matt, that the applicants you've interacted with would be afraid to give us their tax returns?
Matt, I don't know if you want me to speak to that a little more, as I'm the one that reviewed the applications.
Thank you, Marisa.
But we did have some businesses that didn't qualify because they had shared tax returns with their spouses. And then if it wasn't for the third round of changes in the business loan program, they wouldn't have received anything. So yes, it did harm them in the beginning, and then that was amended. Later on, but so that's speaking to that. So, there was instances where that harmed the business. The other thing, if you don't mind me speaking on the other thing, Kathy Biala had mentioned maybe 100,000 net income. And I know that's not set in stone yet, but I wanted to, we might talk about this more tomorrow, but I wanted to recommend upping that to at least 150,000, just based on the applications that I've had so far. The third round of business loan requirements made that the income limit 150,000 already. So if we did 100,000, it would lower that. So I would say we wouldn't want to go below what we already approved in the other rounds.
Is that income, or is that net business sales?
That was net income, which included at the time household income.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Medina Turkson.
I will be brief. I think we ought to up it. And just a quick search: City of Chula Vista, Long Beach, San Jose, Antioch, Stockton are all doing grants, micro grants. So once again, I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. I think we need to look at what other cities are doing. And yes, affecting our credit rating, I understand that. But when we look at 14.75 and unallocated for rainy days, once again, I have to stay strong with our businesses here. Don't invent the wheel. Find something that someone else is doing, and let's replicate it.
Okay. Kathy, why don't we give you the last word, and then if no one objects, we'll go to public comment without a motion, and then we'll make a motion, and we will not go back to public comment unless City Council wants to. Go ahead, Councilmember Villar.
I just want to comment on the total amount of spending that we've done in our loan program is $200,000. This is such an insignificant amount of money that we have thus far allocated to an emergency situation with our businesses and our economic engine. So just wanted to point that out. I think it's so little. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think credit rating concerns, well, I'll talk about that more so we can get to public comment. Let's go to public comment now.
Mr. Mayor, can I really quickly, just to address a little bit of the grant information, because I had looked around too to try and find cities that were doing it. And what I found, this was earlier, months ago, is that the cities that were doing it were cities that were entitlement cities. They got CDBG grants directly, but they didn't have to apply for anything. So that was already a funding source that they had that was applicable to things like grants. There's a lot of annual reporting that goes with that in perpetuity, basically. But CDBG programs are one way of doing it. And again, we're not a city big enough for those entitlement funds. Other cities had received large grants, if you will, from large businesses in town. So say if we had a business that was very successful, they might say, I want to put $100,000 into this program. And it was administered by an outside foundation. So that was another way. And I think cities that had direct larger CARES Act type things as well. So it was pretty kind of, it wasn't using general fund money, if that makes sense.
Got
So
it.
it's a little bit different.
Thank you, Matt. And on our way to public comment, I want to give one statistic. If we have $10 million in unallocated funds, well, we really have 9.75, but assuming we have $10 million in unallocated funds, if we allocated $500,000 for this loan program, that would be 5% of our unallocated funds. And most of our funds do come from our residents and taxpayers, but not the land sale revenues. David Burnett had a good point. Okay, let's go to public comment, starting with Gino Quiroz. Sorry, Gino.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes. Welcome, Gino. We can hear you.
Awesome, thank you. All right, first of all, thank you to council members, Christina, Kathy, actually all of you guys. I appreciate all that you're doing. Mayor Bruce, for your advocacy for our local businesses and grants. I love the direction that this conversation took in this particular section. As some of you may know, the Marina Chamber of Commerce ran several initiatives to help us get us through the first and second round of closures. This year we had, what restaurants are open, what restaurants are closed, who's doing takeout, all that was brand new. We did gift card initiatives. We did buy local campaigns. We still have signs out throughout the community. And I appreciate you guys supporting us and helping businesses put their signs out and put outdoor dining opportunities out there. And so that's been huge and very helpful. And somebody brought up the point earlier tonight that Marina Chamber, we've already and by the way, I'm president of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm sorry to bring that up at the beginning, but we've already decided at the beginning of the year that we weren't just going to focus on our members. We decided we were going to focus on all businesses. And so many of the people involved in those initiatives, many of the businesses were not members, but were local businesses, because we all agree that during a time of crisis, even our members agree that we need to help all of the community. So we've already done that. And I appreciate the conversation about working together closely with the chamber and the city to do more. And I'm looking forward to more of that. I just want to say that these loans that we're talking about, and I'm hearing from the business owners, and I'm a local business owner myself, these loans don't help. That's why the numbers are low. We just saw the numbers. There's 12 people in Marina, 12 businesses that actually got approved for a loan. Well, most of the business owners that reach out to us say they did not get approved because all these personal finances and all these rules and regulations, and they're not helping us. And that's what most of the businesses are telling us. I mean, think about it. If you think about it, why get a loan to keep employees, the Paycheck Protection Program, if you can't open your business? And our city is shutting down our business. And so we can't open a business, but we're going to take a loan to pay for employees, to keep them employed, but we're never going to recuperate from that expense. That is huge. And that's why nobody's applying for these loans. These loans don't make sense. 1 year from now, you will owe for expenses you weren't allowed to recuperate because you were paying an employee while being forced to shut down by the city. It is worse than credit card debt. As I heard in this meeting, we're a charter city and we do have an opportunity to do more for our community, especially since we are part of the reason our local economy is in crisis because we are enforcing these shutdown rules. So I know my time's running out. As a small local business owner myself, I would personally advise other business owners, hey, don't take out a loan, file for bankruptcy, because that loan, who knows how long this crisis is going to go on. You may be shut down for another year. So we need to think about those grants. I'm excited about the idea of grants. There's lots of things we can do about that. And I'm encouraged by the conversation that has come up. I just want to point out as my time comes up here, the Chamber is hosting an emergency Zoom meeting on Monday, December 21st at 9 a.m. The goal of this meeting is to hear from our local businesses owners as to what their biggest struggles are, to hear from community leaders as to what resources are available. Of course, the city has been invited and planned to attend. And you can find this on our website, marinachamber.com. Thank you so much for the time, and done.
Thank you very much, Gino, for working with our businesses. Let's go to Debbie Gentry-Rao.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Delgado and the City Council members. Thank you for everything you have been doing, not only the past couple of days, but through this entire process of COVID. What I believe we should do is, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, that's my dog. Change the payback from 1 year for the businesses to 3 years. And that would help the economy to go back to where whatever the new norm should be. Family finances should not be mixed in with business loans. They should be kept separate. And that if you're saying that we could allocate $500,000 loan for the program, maybe everyone can get 15,000, that would end up with 33 businesses in Marina being able to get either a grant or a loan. And thank you, Mayor Delgado, for saying that the Marina Chamber of Commerce could work with the city. I hope that will work out really well. I'd love to do a contract legally and to help our other businesses. It'll help protect them and keep their homes and stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Okay, anybody else that would like to comment at this time? Okay, Brian McCarthy. Go ahead, Brian, and then Grace Silva Centella.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I wish I could cede my time to Gino because he articulated himself so well, and he really represents businesses of Marina in such a great way that I hope we hear more from him in the future. You know, I would just like to say, I think this is a really proud moment for Marina to see all council members all around the table have such passion and compassion about this issue, regardless of the different ways that one might think about the issue. So I really, like Gino, liked the way the discussion went, and really appreciate every single one of you for what you're doing. Thank you.
All right, Brian, thank you very much. Grace, it looks like you're going to have the last word on this from the public speak. Go ahead, Grace. Maybe Grace isn't with us. Grace, we'll give you a few seconds. There you go.
I'm here.
We can hear you. Good evening. Welcome back.
Good evening. Hello again, Mayor and Council, and thank you very much for this discussion this evening. I am reminded of how a certain political party spoke at the very early days of the pandemic about the packages, the economic relief packages being put together. And there was a rather sad statement made by one high-ranking individual who said, some of these businesses just shouldn't be allowed to survive. And that's a sad way to look at the businesses. However, I think as we look at this program, and I think I can understand a loan to grant program with certain specific criteria, What are you, the council, hoping to achieve? Are you hoping to keep brick and mortar sites open? Are you hoping to keep employees employed? Or are you hoping to protect business owners who may be going through a number of months with no income coming in and not being able to run a business? Also, I think it's wrong to assume that every business is suffering. There have been some businesses that have been doing fine. Construction trades have been doing fine. My business of garden maintenance has been doing fine, except for the first month of the pandemic. But anyone who's in the restaurant business, anyone who's in the hotel industry, I know that there's a number of marina businesses that are having a very difficult time. But don't make the assumption that every business is suffering. And for that reason, I think there is a need for some business income tax verification. However, I will say I adamantly disagree with Councilmember Burnett. I, for a long time, was a partner with my husband in my garden maintenance business. My husband is now retired. So my income is a sole proprietor income, but our tax return is a joint return. Any income my husband may generate, either from another job or through Social Security, should not be applied towards the viability or the success of my business, or how my business may, or anyone else's business may suffer during the pandemic. I also want to stress that the PPP, as Gino had pointed out, that had to be used for very specific needs: rent, utilities, and the biggie was payroll. So most businesses that I know of did not apply for PPP because, number one, they didn't know how long this was going to go on for, and number two, their employees, in fact, were much better off collecting the increased benefit in the unemployment. And then finally, when you look at doing this program, if you're going to go from a loan to grant program, I think that there has to be some assurance that they stay in business for a certain number of months. But are you also going to be looking at sole proprietors with no employees who may work out of their homes and be marina based? Thank you very much.
And everybody that's commented. We'll go ahead and close public comment and try to get to these questions. The only question I wrote down was Grace asking, what are we trying to do? And other council members can answer. My answer is we're trying to protect storefronts to keep them open. We're trying to protect jobs and employees, and we're trying to help businesses pay their rent, utilities, and payroll. And in doing so, we're trying to protect the financial stability of our city and the quality of life as is given to us by the downtown, having so many family-oriented, many ethnic businesses. Small businesses are the lifeblood of our downtown. So protecting the city as a whole, but those components of it specifically are in my mind. And I want to give a couple of examples. Francisco's was a Mexican restaurant here for 12 years. Dishes was a restaurant here for 19 years. Both of those were family owned. They went out of business not earning any more than when they started, but they gave respectively 12 and 19 years of their life, 6 days a week inside of their restaurant. And to me, there's a high value there. And to give restaurants and other businesses like that $10,000 or $15,000 loan, grant, whatever, is a small pittance to tell them, please continue. If you can stay, we want to help you. And I think it's a really important time for us to be thinking like that. Okay, others that want to answer that question, because everyone else might have different reasons of why they might want this loan program or grant program. Councilmember Biala. You're muted, Kathy. Kathy, you're muted.
Sorry, I get too excited about wanting to speak. So I agree with everything the mayor has said. Plus, we are also considering individual loans. And so we just don't want to forget about that too, because I'm very concerned about when the rent moratorium ends and how people are going to sustain that when they already have backload, probably a debt of for their apartments. And so I want to be sure that we are helping those folks, because we do not need to have a new homeless situation here.
I don't think I answered the question about the home occupations. Grace asked if what we were doing about home occupations. Maybe it wasn't a question, could have been a comment. But Kathy or David or Christina, do you want to address whether you think we should extend whatever we do for businesses to home occupations or keep it to brick and mortar storefronts?
Could they be eligible for the individual loan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's where it belongs.
Christina, do you have an opinion? You're muted at this moment.
Maybe some businesses have had to close up their storefront to make it work from home. That's my concern. And they're also in the same boat, trying to make the mortgage, and I don't have a problem including them.
Well, my concern including them is that they could swamp our loans. You know, we might get 20 home occupations, and I'm not sure if they contribute as much to our city as the storefronts from a selfish city perspective.
Yeah.
Does staff have any financial wisdom to give here between the value to the city of home occupations compared to brick and mortars?
I would just going to quickly point out that the current programs require, so this would be a change to the program. The current programs require them to provide some proof of economic damages. So if you're a home occupation business, you wouldn't be, for your business, you wouldn't have like a utility bill and stuff, but you would if for the individual. So under the residential loan, then might be the better fit because of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or you just don't have that requirement for damages.
How about, go ahead.
Can I add to that? So under the current business requirement, it was 10 or fewer employees. So that did include some that were home occupation. We did give a loan to one who didn't have a brick and mortar store, and they did qualify and had everything that they needed. We did have one that applied for a business, and we converted them to a residential loan. So given the authority over the loan program, we were able to say, someone who did apply for business, we were able to convert them to the residential. So I don't know if we want to include those in the restrictions, and maybe just leave that up to the loan committee when we're reviewing the applications. I'm not sure if it would restrict those who would qualify for, getting a business loan.
I think the specific one though that we converted to residential, they were actually a landlord, so they applied for the business program as a landlord, saying they had loss of income.
Got it.
And
what would it be like? Would it make sense if we had home businesses under the residential program able to get twice as much as a residential without a home business? So let's say 2,000 for residents, 4,000 for home occupation, 1,000 for residents, 2,000 for, just double the residential if you're a home occupation. Does that sort of make it fairer?
I think we would be able to discern with the applications on that, that's my other, making sure that we can have the criteria be supported, right? So if we're requiring business licenses for the businesses, will we require the home occupations to make sure they have a valid permit? So that might be something else to take into consideration if we wanted to add that.
So are you saying, Marisol, if we had a checkbox, do you have a home occupation, or let's say, do you have a brick and mortar storefront? Do you think it would be difficult to verify that, for the city staff to verify that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Then I didn't understand your point that you just made. Can you restate it?
Sure. If we're gonna have the different criteria on the residential loan for home occupation, the thing that I mentioned was, are we going to require them to have a valid home occupation permit as we would the businesses to have a valid business license?
I would think absolutely. They're not a business if they don't have a business license.
Right, and they have to be in compliance with the city codes.
Good point. Okay, Kathy, does anyone have any comments at
Yeah,
this
I
time?
just want to think about, I have no clue at all how many home businesses do we have in operation in Marina right now. So I just want to make sure that we see whatever funding comes through is never going to be enough to cover all of our businesses and all of our individuals. And so that is the reality. And so I think we're going to have to be prudent about our criteria, because we just cannot, even if we do a lottery or first come, first serve basis, it's just not going to cover everyone. So I just want to make that statement.
Okay, thank you. Where do we go from here? Do we continue to try to beat out the application specifics? Do we punt that for tomorrow at 6 p.m.? Do we leave it to a loan committee? Staff, Lane Long, what do you suggest we do at this point?
I think we've heard some, I think some general consensus from the council. What the council gave the authority to staff before, again, we have a subcommittee of the finance director, Matt, and Bob Rathy, and to have them get together tomorrow and talk about these concepts, and at tomorrow night's meeting, come back with modifications to the business loan program and also the residential loan program. And I think our former finance director, Eric Frost, is still around. So I think we'll try to reach out to him tomorrow, and because he had some good insight and input as we put this program together. I think we got the general gist of the direction from the council. So I would suggest let us go back as a staff, work on that, and have that ready tomorrow night. And maybe if we have something concrete ahead of time, we would email that out to you before the meeting, and the public, so that we could prepare for that. I know it'll be a busy day on the staff to get all that together. We may not get that out in advance.
That sounds great to me. Council members, do you have comments? Do you like that? Do you not like that? Silence.
I like that idea.
I always like punting the responsibility onto others. David and Christina?
I support that as well, and I just want to say thank you to staff.
Does council have an idea of how much they want to augment the program by?
I suggest 500,000.
For each program?
Oh. I'd like to hear from others.
How about it? We'll talk that on our staff end, and we'll
because that's the primary reason for that's the council needs to adopt a resolution to make that budget.
Correct. So maybe we'll also put some suggestions on that tomorrow night, the council. I mean, we definitely heard 500,000 on that end. And so let us talk about it and look at it from our finance and looking at it from the end of our budget, some of our projections, and because we definitely heard very clearly the need out there. So if you're comfortable with us coming back with some suggestions tomorrow.
Councilmember Burnett had one question I would like us to address. If we approve a new loan program, are businesses qualified if they've already gotten a loan?
Let us talk about that tomorrow. I think that's one of the things we need to talk about, because I know there are some businesses who have gotten a loan, and then the question is, can they get a second loan?
Okay. And then Councilmember Burnett had a question that I thought was quite provocative. If they get a loan or a grant, I think he was talking about a grant, but loan or grant, are they required to stay in business for a minimum amount of time? And if they go out of business, they're probably, they can't stay in business. They can't stay in business just because they owe us money. If they're, and if they go out of business, they might not pay us back. So to require them to stay open for a minimum amount of time to get the loan, it's
Mr. Mayor, that was in reference to conversion from loan to grant.
got it. Thank you very much. That totally, I love that I love that criterion if we were to have a loan to grant program. Okay. Any final, go ahead, Kathy Biala and then Lane Long.
Yeah, I just really want to say that our new makeup of our council has been fabulous tonight. I am just so pleased and honored to be working with this dynamic group. I truly feel very, very, very lucky that we have this kind of complex and that we are working so well together. So I really want to say thank you.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Biala. You're a big part of that. You do a lot of work. We appreciate everyone's work and especially staff for hanging with us for 3 nights in a row. Thank you, Donna and Fred and Terry and Tina and David and Doug, Anita. Thanks everybody on staff, Bob and Lane and Matt, of course, and Marty Sol. It's great to have you with us. We really appreciate your input and your vision. Okay, we'll be adjourned, but we'll have a special meeting tomorrow at 6 o'clock to iron out the business loan / grant program. Go ahead, Lane.
And one more thing, and this is regarding the grants, and from that discussion, I think we will on the staff end explore some of these other cities and other programs with grants, and we'll talk to our attorneys, and so we will start exploring that concept. So we aren't going to bury that. We'll focus on this, but we are going to start looking at grants and talking about that. I also want to express our appreciation to the council. This is a great policy discussion, and I love it when you punt it back to us because we're supposed to be doing our administrative jobs. And so I love it when you have your policy discussion and then kick it back to us to do our jobs. So thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Okay. For those staff that aren't going to be here tomorrow night, please have a wonderful holiday.
If I can just make one comment. As to our last agenda item and the city manager's comment, we will take from this discussion that step 1 of the 2-step process has been fulfilled, and you want us to bring back the information on the grants.
Okay.
Just to kind of close the loop on that agenda item.
One last thing. Have we adjourned yet? Because there seemed to be a number 12.
No, we have not adjourned. I want to make sure that the other directors, Doug, Terry, Tina, did you have any comments on this matter?
No, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right. So number 12 is to give an update on anything that people are doing or to ask clarifying questions of staff. Christina, did you have anything?
Would this be the right time to talk, just to mention the discussion about the odor? And secondly, I attended a TAMSI meeting.
Yes.
Okay. On the odor issue, there was a Monterey Regional Waste Management District meeting where they've agreed to do a study, a smell study, and also to bring back, there's a 10-year lease on Mr. Day, forgot the first name, who operates the compost, will come back for modification in January. The 10-year lease, I believe, has been approved, and there will be a public workshop, a public comment workshop date to be determined. Maybe Bruce, you know the dates on that, to have more public input about the smell, I believe. And then on the TAMSI end, they are moving forward with demolishment of their property near our buildings that were identified for the arts, what is that called? Arts Village. Yeah, so they're moving forward with some requests for proposals to bring it down. So there's my report.
Thank you. And to add to the odor issue, we've had a lot of odors wafting into Marina and making some people sick and making some people very annoyed, understandably. Marina public and Marina representatives made a very strong showing at the board meeting of the Waste Management District a couple of Fridays ago, completely changed the direction, which was going to be a 10-year lease that day with with lack of teeth for enforcement of odors. Since a couple of Fridays ago, staff has turned it around. They were going to recommend a 2-year lease, not a 10-year lease, for the outdoor composting 30-acre operation that's been going on at the landfill. And they've agreed to either a January 27th or 28th evening meeting, whichever of those 2 evenings gets the most speakers from various agencies that are potentially odor generators, so that the public can hear how we're going to deal with this in a teamwork effort to hopefully stop or reduce as much as possible the odors that have been coming into town, especially in the last several years. On the TAMC front, our city manager is working with TAMC, and hopefully, fingers crossed, next July to October, we will have a 1-month recreation activity called Railroad Handcar, where you can pay money to go on a handcar and travel on the railroad tracks for 5 miles, 2.5 miles each way, starting at Palm Avenue and Del Monte Boulevard. And there's a lot of excitement in our community, more than I have for the project, but I was just amazed at how exciting it is to so many people. So they've gotten me excited. So I hope that our city manager and Christina and I, representatives on the TAMC board, I'm her alternate, can work with TAMC to make sure that we don't disappoint so many people, that we bring that rail car, that hand car, whatever you call it, to Marina. And then I had a couple of serious clarifying questions. One to Brian, if he's still on, he is, I think. Could we consider the duplexes on Hayes Circle as potentially consistent with some of our objectives, such as blight removal and our baseline program assessments that were some of our objectives from the December 10th?
Yeah, I would say yes. I think we had that. It's part of Cypress Knolls, so we can bring it back for council to consider.
Mayor, you get that one is we're looking at a land swap with that. And so
it's underway. Is that a project you would consider underway?
Correct. So yes.
There's been perhaps some appraisals done, et cetera, like that.
Correct. We got an appraisal and we need to expand it. We just haven't gone back and added more to the appraisal. Okay.
And then my other question is, when we have our workshop and when we send out our survey, one or the other, is there a possibility for us to put price tags on all these potential projects and to tell the people that we have X amount of dollars and try to get them to think about how they would recommend that we use our money? Because Kathy Biala and others have talked about how people are just going to say, yes, we want a pool, and yes, we want everything. Everybody is going to want something. But if we told them that we need to work within a particular budget and that each of these projects have a price tag, very rough ballpark estimate, I think that would do a lot to focus the input and even within ourselves. So just think about the money available and the cost of these projects as somehow folding that into what we're going to be doing in January and February, seeking public input and more direction from our city council. All right, Councilmember Biala? You're muted, Kathy.
I'm about as bad as Bob Rathie. So I just have a question. This probably will be directed to Bob Rathie. I have always felt and said this on many occasions that I really want to encourage our community to talk with our council people and for us to reach out to all the different constituents that we have in Marina. But I've also found that the public has a misunderstanding about how they can reach out to us. There are some folks that feel that if they reach out to too many of us, or where they share information to all of us, that somehow they are breaking the Brown Act. And I just want to make really sure and get some specific questions answered definitively, that have to do with their role, the public's role in contacting and talking to us. And so I have a list of 5, if I could submit them, and that we could get some really clear answers from our city council person. And I don't have to read them, but they're really specific, because these are the things that I think people have come to me and they feel uncomfortable. So the first one is just, can any member of the public talk, phone, or email to any and all council members about the same issue? And if not, then, and if there's exceptions, what are they? And then there's another 4, but I really want them to.
The answer to the first one is yes.
Yes, I know. Exactly. However, people are not then sure about some other questions below that, because they have gotten some information that makes them uneasy about that. So I have asked specific questions, and if I can email that, so you can go over that in the public eye to hear that they don't have to worry about these things in contacting.
We'll be glad to look at the question.
Thank you very much.
I don't think we'll be anything to do about global misinformation, but we'll do our best.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Christina or anyone else, do you have anything before we adjourn? Okay, City Manager Lane Long.
Just we've alluded to this, but City Hall services will be closed we'll work through December 23rd, but after that we are closed December 24th and open up again on January 4th. So even though the building's closed, all employees will not be working except for public safety after December 23rd.
Okay, thanks everyone, especially Jasmine, Elizabeth, Debbie, Audra, and Karen for sticking it out to the last moment. And I know some of you were here last night as well. All right, good night, everybody. We are adjourned.
Good night. See you tomorrow.
Good night, Tina.
Holidays.